Off field. Left. What I want.
Get back slow. I love the way she rock it. I love the way she move it, shake it on me. When she cry for him, the shawty is the winner. You can tell that shawty's over again now. She's confident. I love the way she move it.
YouTube, what's going on? It's Gotti here with another Washington Commanders video, and in today's video I'm coming on here with a video where we're going to be talking about the new defensive backs coach that the Washington Commanders have just hired, and we're also going to take a look at what should the Washington Commanders do at their next head coach vacancy. Should they fill it with an offensive minded head coach or a defensive minded head coach? So without further ado, let's get straight into today's video. But before we do, make sure you guys please go down below, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. We're on the road to 7,000 subscribers, so please help me get there as soon as possible. And also, don't be afraid to become a channel member. Those are now live. You can join the Gotti Gang if you want to. And also check out my other page, High Off Words. That's the new brand that I have. Eventually we're gonna have a ton of content coming on that page, podcast, you know, and a ton of other things coming to that page, so check that out. And now with all that out the way, let's go ahead and get to today's video. So the Washington Commanders, breaking news, kind of sorta, have just made a new hire. Let's go ahead and read it. It is on the screen for you guys also. Per Adam Schefter, having recently fired defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio, the defensive backs coach Brent Vesselmeyer, the Commanders now have hired former Bills secondary coach Jim Salgado to help out the defensive staff. Salgado now will be working with the Commanders on an interim basis. Now the Washington Commanders, obviously we knew that they were going to fill this hole because they fired Vesselmeyer alongside Jack Del Rio, and obviously they needed somebody to fill that void, and obviously they didn't have anybody in-house that they felt comfortable with, so they had to go look elsewhere. I don't know how to feel about this hiring, because at this point, does it really matter? First of all, and second of all, the Bills secondary and defense as a whole has been pretty bad this season. Now, I don't know if it's directly his fault, which I highly doubt, because he has dealt with a ton of injuries at his position that he's coaching. Obviously, Tre'Davious White being the main one that is out. So I don't necessarily want to base his coaching on the Bills' defensive struggles, but it is something to look at as like, look, you're a part of a struggling unit. So is it something that you're not doing, right? So again, I don't want to necessarily judge him solely off of the Bills, you know, mishaps this season, but you cannot overlook that because he was a part of the Bills. Now, does that mean he can't come here and fix what's going on here? No, that doesn't mean that. But again, do you expect him to do that? I don't know, especially if we're this late into the season. And who's to say he even gets an opportunity to coach a full-term basis? This is really just like a 5-week, you know, internship or whatever you want to say, as they mentioned. So I really don't know what to make much of this hiring. He's not a guy that I know a ton about. And again, based off of his track record with the Bills, their defense has been struggling, and the secondary has been a big part of that, but also the lack of pass rush too. So I don't want to just directly put it all on him. He also coached at Michigan State University too, so he has some experience at both levels, which is good. He was the cornerbacks coach there. So I mean, him moving up in the ranks could be a good sign that he went from college to the NFL. Now he's here. So maybe he could be a boost to this secondary. Maybe he could be the missing piece. You know, Chris HIRES, I don't know if we could ever replace him, but it would be good. Maybe we found him. Maybe he's a guy that brings energy to this defensive unit, secondary specifically, and he could be pretty good. But again, it's just 5 weeks. The season's pretty much done. We got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle coming up, so maybe we brought him in because he knows those guys well, playing them 2 times a year. So maybe that can help, but I mean, I highly doubt it. We're most likely going to be without Emmanuel Forbes for the remainder of the season. Again, I haven't heard any updates, but once I do get updates back on Emmanuel Forbes, I'll make a video on it. But more likely than not, he could be out for the remainder of the season, or you know, because he is dealing with an elbow injury, and they said it's pretty severe. So we could be without him for a couple weeks, maybe the rest of the season, considering the fact that the season is pretty much done. So this is solid. This is a okay signing, solid signing. I mean, I guess to fill the void of the missing vessel mine, but other than that, it ain't really nothing that's gonna push the needle, right? Because you don't really know much about him, and at the end of the day, he is just a DB's coach. He's not a defensive coordinator, so he doesn't directly impact the game per se, but he does have say in the way his position guys approach the game. And to be honest with you, a lot of these guys that you talk to and ask, they'll tell you that they're more close to their positional coaches than they actually are the whole group coaches or their coordinators. So maybe this could be good, and they could build a connection with the Cameron Curls, the Kendall Fullers, Benjamin St. Juice's, Emmanuel Forbes, and Danny Johnson's of the world. Maybe he can build that connection and get, you know, what's been missing since Chris Harris has left out of him, man. Because I mean, again, I think a lot of y'all are just starting to see the hole that was left behind after Chris Harris left Washington. I was saying it all along, and I was saying it once we let him go, or it was rumored that we were going to let him go. I said, man, this dude deserves to be a defensive coordinator somewhere. I would have loved for us to still have him here, and we could have moved on from Jack Del Rio at some point, and we hired Chris Harris or promoted Chris Harris to defensive coordinator. Because I'm telling you, man, in a couple years, don't be surprised if this guy's the defensive coordinator of a team and he's running up and down the sideline just hyping guys up. Like, y'all know the kind of energy he brought. So I just have a bad feeling that this is yet another coach that we have let go, that is potentially going to get a job somewhere else and maybe, who knows, become a head coach in this league eventually, right? So we already know that all too well with the offensive side of the ball, with Mike McDaniel, Matt LaFleur, other guys too, right? I don't know why I'm blanking live on air right now, but we know the guys that have left. Kyle Shanahan, the list goes on of guys that have left here. Kevin O'Connell left here that has been successful. So that is kind of giving me PTSD, but hopefully this guy could potentially be something. But that's really all I have to say about it. Again, not too much, not anything that's too shiny, I guess to say, especially in this point of the season, because the season's pretty much done. But who knows? Maybe with Ron Rivera calling the plays and now a new defensive backs coach just gives the secondary a boost that has been lacking all season long. No update on Derek Forrest either. I'm pretty sure his season's done. I think he broke something too. I think he broke like a shoulder or something. So yeah, he's probably done for the year. Haven't heard nothing from him since the Bears game, so he's done. But now let's go ahead and get to the second part of the video. This is the important part of the video, really. It's an article that came out, and it was basically saying how the teams that went offensive-minded head coaches are more successful than other teams that went defensive-minded. So here's a little area of the prompt. It says, over the past 24 seasons, 53% of the head coaches in the NFL had prior experience on the offensive side of the game, including offensive coordinators, quarterbacks, coaches, and so on. Teams coached by those offensive-minded head coaches have accounted for 61% of top 5 offenses in the NFL over that span. In other words, they have been responsible for more than their fair share of stellar team performances. They also have been at the helm of 55% of the top 5 defensive performances. Again, more than their fair share. That means, of course, the defensive-minded coaches have accounted for less than their share of top 5 offensive and defensive performances. So that is the little excerpt that I want to show you guys, and it got me thinking, Washington, should they go offensive-minded based off of this research? And maybe that's what Sheen was brought in here for. the guy that Eugene Shin, I should say, he was brought in to help the analytical department do stuff like this, research like this, to see where they should go for their next head coach. Again, this was a guy that was brought in by Josh HIRES, so this has nothing to do with Ron Rivera. So I'm thinking that's why we brought him in, to maybe help, you know, decide where should they go the next head coach. And I think offensive minded is ultimately where they're going to go and where they should go. We already been down this road with a defensive minded head coach, and then in my opinion, a defensive minded head coach is kind of at a disadvantage, because yeah, you can be a good defensive minded coach and have your defense playing well and have your team overall playing well, but you're not calling the offensive plays. And you know, at any point in time, especially this day and age in the league, your offensive coordinator is going to eventually get poached at if he continues to have the success that you're having. So I would much rather have my offensive minded head coach be that instead of defensive minded, because you can't take my head coach. Like, you can't do nothing with my head coach. You want my defensive coordinator? Unless he Robert Saleh, I'm like but more likely than not, I'm gonna have somebody under Robert Saleh type of head coach or type of defensive minded head defensive coordinator, to where we can just move him up and run the same kind of system that's been working offensively. You can do that, but it's gonna be much harder. So I would much rather go offensive minded, just because, again, this defensive minded experience has not been well. And also, I think the new age of this league, the new success of the NFL, is marrying your young quarterback with an offensive-minded head coach. So I think that's where Washington should go. So whether it's a Ben Johnson, I like Bobby Sloak more now after watching more. Just seeing what he's been able to do with C.J. Stroud is just, you know, chef's kiss. But I mean, if they was to go defensive minded, I don't want it, but I wouldn't be opposed to, like, if it was a Dan Quinn. Imagine how good you'll be able to do to poach away Dan Quinn from your division rivals, and imagine what he could do with this defense. But again, it's less appealing for me now because we don't have Chase Young or Montez Sweat. So I really don't care for a defensive-minded head coach, but if they were to do it, I wouldn't hate it. But I fully kind of expect them to go offensive route, especially if they want to get the best out of their young quarterback in Sam Howell. So that's what I think they're going to do, and I think articles like this are going to support their reasoning and going to help them with their decision making, because analytics and numbers, you know, tell some of the story, right? It doesn't tell all the story, but it tells some of the story. And we obviously can see on the sideline as we watch these games that, man, this defensive minded stuff ain't working, especially if you got an older defensive minded head coach and then an older defensive-minded defensive coordinator too. Like, you feel me? So it's time for a change, and I think that's where Washington should go. But there you guys have it. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section down below. Both topics that we discussed: the new hire of the defensive backs coach, you know, from the Buffalo Bills. How do you feel about the hiring of Jim Salgado? And then how do you feel about this short excerpt that we read about offensive-minded versus defensive-minded head coach? Where do you think Washington should attack their next head coach vacancy? Leave that all down below in the comment section. I'm going to read each and every one of you guys' comments. Love all of you guys. Thank you for watching today's video. Y'all have a blessed one, and see y'all later for the next video. Have a good one. Peace.